Okay, good morning again. So we're going to be talking about math. We are doing lesson 122 today. So you're going to be in your math books on page 460, talking about lesson 122. Okay, so we're going to look in mental math at A, B, and C in the mental math box. In A, B, and C, I want you to look at that first one on page 460. In the box for A, 1/10 of 30. Okay, this is the same as just taking 30 and dividing it by 10. So 1/10 of 30, well, we know that 30 divided by 10 is going to be 3. So if we had 30 of something, we broke it into 10 groups, there'd be 3 in each. So 1/10 of 30 is 3. So this will help you with B. So B is 3/10 of 30. So if we know what 1/10 of 30 is, then that'll help us with 3/10. Because if 1/10 of 30 is 3, then 3/10 is going to be that 3 times. So 3/10 of 30 should be 9. Okay? And then 9/10 of 30. Again, this will help us. If you ever get something like this, bring it back to, well, what would one of them be? And then you can take whatever that is and multiply it by the number they're asking you. So in this case, 9/10 of 30. Well, we know that 1/10 of 30 is 3. So if we had 9 of those 3 things, that would be 3 times 9, that would be 27. So 9/10 of 30 is 27. All right. Moving on, we're talking about least common multiples of sets of numbers. Okay? So we're going to compare 4 and 6 and think about their multiples. Now this is a shift for us because we've done a lot of work looking at factors of numbers, the little numbers that make them. We're going to shift our thinking now, and we're going to think about the numbers that are being made by these little numbers. Like our posters on our whiteboard at school, I had all of the multiples for different numbers on those posters on our whiteboard at school. Okay, so think about those. So you line the top of the whiteboard. So all of the numbers that 4 make, all of the numbers that 6 make, and that happens to be what we're looking at today, are the common multiples of 4 and 6, the numbers that they each make, that they share, okay, that they have in common. So all you have to do at this point is count by 4s. Start counting up by 4s, start counting up by 6s, and you can see which ones they have alike. So think about it: 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 28, 32, 36, 40. Okay, the same with 6. 6, 12, oh, there's one they have in common: 18, 24, 30, 36. So as you can see in your book here, they list them in order from least to greatest, each of them, and then they circle the numbers, the multiples that they have in common. The least common multiple is going to be the smallest number they have in common. Okay, so the smallest number that both 4 and 6 make is 12. Okay, 4 makes 12 and 6 makes 12. Okay, each independently on their own, but that's the multiple they share, and that's the least, that's the smallest one they share. They also each on their own make 24, and each on their own make 36, but 12 is the least common multiple of that. Okay, so that's LCM. You'll see that abbreviation LCM in math, and that means least common multiple. Okay, so when we're thinking about the multiples of 6 and 8, again, you just count in your head. For this particular exercise, it would help for you to write them down in order from least to greatest, separating them by commas. Okay, and as you start to think of all the multiples of 6 we just did, thankfully we can do that again really quickly, writing them down. And then you do the same thing for 8. You circle all the numbers they share, and you find the one of least value that they share. Okay, so as I'm counting in my head, this is what I'm simply doing, just like the book showed you. I'm just thinking of all the multiples of 6, starting with itself and going up. I'll usually stop at, if I'm counting by 6s, either the 9th or 10th time I've counted by 6. Okay, or any number. I'll stop by the 9th or 10th time I'm counting by that number. Same with 8. 8, 16, 24, 32, 40. Okay, I keep going on and on and on. But then now I'm going to just go through and find the numbers that they have in common. Okay, and if I had more room on my board, I would go through to find out that they each also share 48. Okay, but their least common multiple today, their LCM, is going to be 24. Okay. Pretty fun exercise just dealing with numbers today. I always think that having number sense and really understanding numbers that make other numbers and numbers that are being made by numbers just really helps you do quick computation in your head. It also helps you with fractions a lot. So practice today, A through G, is just really finding the least common multiple of sets of numbers. Do write them out quickly, jot them down for some of those numbers that have a lot of multiples, and circle the ones they have in common. Remember, don't get this confused with factors. Factors are the little numbers that make the bigger numbers. We're not dealing with that now. We're talking about those bigger numbers being made. Multiples are those bigger numbers being made, okay, by the factors. Okay, so now we're looking for their product, if that makes sense. Okay, today's an even number day, so you will do 2 through 24. And as I'm looking, I don't see anything that stands out as too tricky, 2 through 24. Just remember on number 14, you guys, that you solve in parentheses first. And because you are subtracting, you have to line up those decimals. So look at number 14 as you're listening to this video right now. Look at number 14. Okay, you're going to solve in the parentheses first. But we've been dealing with multiplication of decimals where we haven't had to line up the decimals. Now we're subtracting. So remember, you have to line up those decimals when you subtract. Then once you finish subtracting within the parentheses, then you're going to have to subtract from a whole number. Remember, that whole number, you're going to have to insert a decimal and some zeros in the tenths and hundredths place to subtract that other decimal from it, okay? So pay attention to that. In number 16, you guys, in number 16, you're back to multiplying by decimals. At that point, you just multiply and then count the numbers to the right of the decimal and then come in and from the right of your product and place your decimal in there. So 2 different skills going on with 14 and 16 today. Pay very close attention to those two, okay? And remember, with subtraction and addition, you line up the decimals, okay? With multiplication, you simply multiply, you kind of ignore the decimals, treat them as whole numbers, multiply, and then count the numbers to the right of the digit in the factors that you're multiplying, and then when you get to the product, go to the right of that product and count over that many decimals, that many spaces, and place your decimal, okay? All right, and that looks to be everything. 22, again, solving in your parentheses. When you have a whole number and you're multiplying by a fraction, you're going to put a 1 under that whole number so you can multiply by your fraction. So I'm looking at number 22 right now. Look at, oh, I just clicked my button. Look at number 22 right now, okay? This is what's in the parentheses right now, 3 times a half. Remember, you have to put a 1 under that whole number 3, then multiply across the numerator and multiply across the denominator. Once you solve in the parentheses, then you're ready to subtract that number from 1.5. So these multiple step problems are getting a little more tricky. They're preparing you for pre-algebra, okay? It's the order of operations, really understanding that. So take some time. Make sure that you really think through number 22. Okay, boys and girls, have a great day in math. I'll be on in a little bit to talk about grammar and science.